This is Center Stage, putting lawyers in the spotlight by highlighting attorneys and other industry experts to help take your law firm to the next level.
All right, hey, Julie, welcome to the show today. How you doing?
Doing wonderful. I'm excited to be here with you.
So glad to have you here as well. So Julie, for everyone out there listening, Julie is a lawyer herself, very successful, and then has also started an organization that helps other attorneys build their law firm called $1 Million Solution. I'll turn it over to her in a second to tell you kind of a little bit more about her, but I'm really excited because her and I have been kind of chatting before we hit the record button here, and right now it's January 2021, and Julie, you and I were talking about 2020 and of course everything with COVID, and we kind of stumbled across this conversation about how 2020 really forced all of us to modernize our businesses faster, to kind of embrace the future of kind of the internet and technology. And what we realize is, that's what we need to talk about today, right? Is the importance of embracing the future and really seeing where the legal industry is heading and how to see it and kind of what to do about it now. So we're going to talk about that today. I think it's going to be a really unique episode. But Julie, people want to know who the heck you are and why they should listen to what you have to say. So I've known Julie for years now. We've been involved with $1 Million Solution, and they're great people. I can tell you they know what the heck they're talking about. But Julie, kind of introduce yourself, give us your background, whatever you want to share, and I'm sure we'll learn more about you throughout the show as well.
Thanks. Yeah, fantastic. So I spend my days helping people answer the questions: what happens if they get sick? What happens if they die? What happens if they get Alzheimer's? And I do that as an elder law and estate planning attorney. And I feel really lucky to do what I do for a living, a bachelor's degree in gerontology, a study of the aging process. And I've gotten to spend my adult life dealing with that and helping people. But also with $1 Million Solution, which is my other passion, I get to help other attorneys learn how to do their jobs better so that they get the practices that they want, and the life that they want, so they get balanced too. So, as you were saying, I've been doing this for a while now, and really enjoy both parts of it, both still being an attorney, and then being able to, be in the trenches, and then coach people along the way. $1 Million Solution is a really neat group of attorneys that it's more than a coaching group. It's a community of people who share ideas with each other so that we all do a better job in our lives and our practices. So great to be here.
I love your story. I was actually doing another episode recently, and I kind of had a similar conversation with this other person that I was interviewing. And, we live in this day and age of like influencers and all these people online selling courses and all these things. And I think the question out there is always, has this person actually done what they're teaching? Mm-hmm. And what I want everyone to know about you is that, you built a successful law firm. You crushed it on not only the things we're going to talk about today, but other areas as well that we could do future episodes on. And now you've turned around and also created an organization that helps other lawyers kind of, learn from some of the things you've learned along the way. So you've lived it, you've breathed it, you've done it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just important that everyone knows that there's probably a lot they could learn from you. And we'll, at the end of the episode, we'll kind of share your firm's website as well as $1 Million Solutions website. People want to check that out.
Great. Fantastic.
But so tell me more about this, but the thing we're going to land on today, and I think this has been a key to your success, right? In both, $1 Million Solution, which we'll affectionately refer to as MDS today, mm-hmm. As well as your law firm. I think you guys have always done a great job of having foresight, of seeing where the industry is going, seeing where technology is going, and embracing that. So tell me more a little bit about that topic and kind of how you guys think you've done that well.
Absolutely. One of the main tenets of the $1 Million Solution is, to be able to see around the corner to the future, and to advise elder law and estate planning attorneys and other attorneys, what lies ahead. Because unfortunately, we all get into these ruts and we just keep practicing law. And sometimes as an attorneys, we're like, we have to do it that way because of ethics or because of this or because of that. And we fail to see what's going on out there. So, the $1 Million Solution, we were talking about the change of veterans benefits before anybody else was, really saying to people, don't be scared of this. figure out how you're going to change your business to respond to it. There's lots of people that are talking about, oh, scared and, fighting it. Some things are going to change. And what we have to do in order to keep our businesses profitable and relevant to the people that we serve is we need to respond to that. We have to say, okay, that's where it's going. So what do we need to do? And there's lots of other examples through the years we were one of the first groups to talk about, as an attorney, as an elder law attorney, your trust doesn't work great for everybody. If you have a client who has, $1 million and most of it in IRAs, we as attorneys need to start thinking about long-term care insurance and creative financial products. That's something that we brought to people years ago. That doesn't mean you had to sell it. It means that if you're going to help somebody answer their question, what happens if I get sick? You have to see beyond your own solution. And that's relevant now. What's going to happen to benefits 20 years from now? I don't know. But really important that we think about not just what's happening right now, but what is happening in the future. And what should we do today to change our practices to be able to respond to that so that we're still able to help people and make money?
So, I think the principle of that makes a lot of sense. What are some of the things that practically help someone do that? Whether it's cultivating that mindset, or let's say you have that mindset, how do you go about kind of looking around the corner how does one do that?
Yeah, it's, some of it is just a natural curiosity. I'm naturally curious. I naturally want to know. So, some of what I think is happening because of 2020 and our response in the future, that has to do a lot with me reading a lot of different things, but also being open to the fact that I don't need to fight about waiting, and I'm not going to just sit and wait until it goes back to, so a good example of that is I know a lot of attorneys out there, you're waiting for us just to go back to in-person seminars. And I would say to you, stop waiting. I'm not saying they're not going to come back, but they're never going to come back in the way that we did it before. Plus, if we learned anything, we should have learned about how the way we did it before, which was just, let's have a seminar, let's get people to sign up, and let's not follow up on them. Let's assume some bias that our clients aren't online. They're not going to virtually, get to us. If we free ourselves from thinking that way, we can think about, well, how can we make this the best? And I think, your question is, how do I know this stuff? I think I'm just naturally curious about it, but I'm also willing to test and take a chance. So, one of the great things about having the coaching group, but also the law firm is when I have an idea, my law firm is the first place we try things, and not everything works. There's a lot we tried this year that didn't. But then we were able to go back and say, well, what of it did work? And how do we make that better? And how can this be better? And so I really love that stuff. I really love figuring it out and then testing it, an A/B test and seeing what works. And then, through my coaching group, being able to give that to people and say, here's what worked. And sometimes what worked is not what I would have guessed. We all have biases, all of us.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think I love that you brought up kind of trying things, and I've been learning a lot myself about this idea of a willingness to fail. And one of the things that really convicted me lately was just kind of realizing that oftentimes when you're not sure how you want to proceed in something, you delay making the choice. Mm-hmm. And in the time that it takes you to make that choice, someone else has already tried something, failed, and is already on their second or third thing they're trying. And that actually puts them ahead of you. You know what I mean? So there's definitely, to embracing the future, I think there has to be a willingness to fail, right?
Absolutely. There has to be, it's being a risk taker. It's funny. I actually read something sometime, and I thought it was really interesting that I grew up on a farm in north central Pennsylvania, and there was an article about how successful those farm kids end up being. And the argument was, it wasn't that we're hardworking, which I would argue that I worked a lot when I was a kid, but it's actually because we're willing to take risks. It's actually because, there weren't, gates, there weren't things that, my cousin and I get together and we can talk about how each one of us should have died at some point in time in our childhood. But it's interesting. It's actually that risk taking that they say that I'm not afraid to fail. I'm not afraid to take a risk. I'm not afraid to, use $500 to test something and If it doesn't work, I'm okay with that, because I will also spend the time looking at the data and saying, well, what part of it did work, or how could we change it to make it work? And so I think that's really important. And I know not everybody naturally will do that. So that's why it's important that you get with somebody, a coach, somebody, an organization that's able to help you with that. Even if it's, just not even a coaching group, but like some place like Spotlight Branding too, that can say, hey, here's the future. You need to have an advisor in some ways that can talk to you about, these are the changes that we're seeing, or here's the testing that we've done. And I know you want to do it this way, but the testing says this way is, the better way to do it. So
no, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing that right now, just ourselves, because Spotlight Branding is all about content marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And where we're seeing where the future is going is that marketing is not just about call and response, or it's not just about like lead gen. It's not just about I spend money here and that exact dollar I spent created a lead.
Right.
Marketing was like that for a while, but with the evolution of social media and all these things, the need to just create content for the sake of consumption and to create content for the sake of getting your name out there. Not that those things aren't measurable, but and people like Gary Vee are out there banging the drum to like, you need to have an advertising department and they can be judged on ROI, but you need to have an editorial department that just creates content.
Absolutely.
And we're beating that drum too. And same thing, it's for us, that's kind of looking ahead and kind of seeing where things are going.
Well, and we certainly know that through COVID, one of the things that changed is that people are consuming content online. Listen, if they're going to engage me as an attorney, or anybody on here that's a professional services listening to this, if they're going to engage you, they have to get to know, like, and trust you. And when we lost the in-person, we lost that. And that is why what you're saying is so right, because they have to consume content. They have to consume about you so that they can get to the same point they would have been if they were going to meet you in person. That's what needs to be replaced. And that content can be about changes in the law, the future, things that they need to know about. It also can be content about you as a person, you individually. What do you like? What do you not like? Those types of things of sharing. All of that is really, really important from my perspective. And I'll be honest with you, I think more important than it was pre-COVID. And that's one of the things that I don't think that changes I don't think that change caused by COVID is going away. I think, I know there's some, people who are listening out there who say, we don't want to hear about the changes from COVID. We're going to wait until everything just goes back. You can't put it back in the box. It happened. 10 years of automation happened in a year. Yes, at some point in time, you can do in-person seminars, but I'm going to tell you, I have clients who are physicians, who are business owners. They like the virtual. They like the online. They like being able to Google about me, consume me, hear from me in a virtual way, and get to know me that way. That's not going to change. It's not going back. Now, all of that, it ends up being very generic. At our firm, we obviously parse it down. And the more you can segment and parse down your marketing message, the better. But some of you might be listening and you're, crisis clients who are, 83 years old. Well, that's different than my 60, we have those clients at our office. That might be different than my 60-year-old business owner who's wondering if he should retire. So, take everything I say with a grain of salt, but generally speaking, people, it's not going to go back to the way it was. Fundamentally, how we attract clients to come to our offices has changed. And even if we're able to lead generate in other ways and talk to them in other ways, they're still going to go back to that virtual self that we have, that credentialing, the way that we see, I remember years ago when somebody said they Googled me and I felt like a little violated, we, that you have to lose all of that. And we have to know that, if we get an award, if something happens, we have to put that out in our digital world somehow so that people can see it and consume it. So really important, I think.
No, I love that. So as we're talking, I feel like I'm kind of, I love this idea of, okay, how do we embrace the future? I think one is a willingness to fail. And I think that's so huge. And I'm really glad we kind of got to that. But I'm kind of seeing a pattern as we're talking. I feel like, I don't want to pigeonhole it too much, but I feel like there's almost two kind of silos or two compartments that we could zero in on to kind of help the listeners kind of think through this for themselves. One, I think, is the evolution of services. Or I bet maybe a better way to put it would be like, where is my industry headed? And therefore, are there new services I could provide, or kind of layers I need to add? You were talking earlier, you're in the estate planning, and you were talking about financial service. So I think over here is kind of like new services. But I think the other silo is changing the way we deliver services, so more of like the technology and the automations. And I think that we can draw a line between those two, right? One is adding new services. Another is, meeting the needs of the market in new ways. The other, though, is simply changing how we deliver those services, as simple as moving to a virtual consultation, for example.
Absolutely.
So I would love to kind of spend like 5 minutes on each of those separately, and
okay, great.
Things to think about. So let's start with the first one, which is more of a, you kind of, you can give your own personal examples from your firm or however you want to do it. But I love this idea of, where's my industry heading and what will my clients need that we aren't providing yet, right? So opportunities for new services, new deliverables, new practice areas, or maybe just major shifts to, how you deliver those services, not necessarily in terms of like the technology, the automation, but, is a practice area going to go away someday? So what are your thoughts there, and kind of what should people be doing for finding ways to kind of develop new services or kind of modify their existing services when looking ahead?
Yeah, that's a great point that I think everybody does need to think about. So, as I said, COVID changed technology, and it's not going to go back. Now, that has an impact on exactly what you're saying, how we deliver our services and what we're delivering. So for many years, a lot of us, sold powers of attorneys. We kept telling people how much they need a power of attorney, and they need to come to our office and have a consultation. And many times, during that consultation, we might, get them to do an entire estate plan or long-term care plan. But that is going to go away because, and I know a lot of times attorneys, we've been fighting the legal Zoom. We've been saying, oh, that's not as good. But what COVID has taught us is that it's not that hard to make an online form. You can get on my website for my law firm, and you can download a power of attorney today for healthcare. I in the midst of all of the healthcare heroes needing them, we put it on our website. Didn't cost us that much money. They can get on there, and yes, they have a healthcare power of attorney. That's going to happen more and more. So our entry level, it's going away. It is. And we're not, and I've said for years, the most successful attorneys already kind of got some of this, which is, it's not about the documents, it's about the plan. It's about being a counselor at law. It's about, what we can do. And what's going to grow is the more niche type of thing, such as like Alzheimer's and dementia planning, where that client needs not just the power of attorney. That client needs an entire plan to get through this journey, and they need to protect themselves against the cost of care and make sure that they have stuff. So I think fundamentally the business is going to change. I think that a lot of what we do that is, filling out forms, data entry, so if a client comes in, let's be honest. If you're selling them a power of attorney, you're just data entering, and then you're printing it out. And yes, you're going over it with them. And please don't discount. Don't think I discount the counseling that goes on with a client about should you appoint 2 kids, 1 kid? Should you appoint any kids? Do you have kids that are responsible? Should you appoint your sister, your neighbor? That counseling. But how hard would that be to put in a podcast? How hard would that be for them to consume online, make their own decision? Do they really need you to do that? I'm going to suggest to you that all of professional services are going to change rapidly because of what it would have happened anyways. It's just going to happen faster. And for those of you who still believe that your job is to do wills and powers of attorneys for people, you will be replaced by technology. I currently know attorneys who are putting all of that online, where clients just fill it out themselves, and then they get, in many different states, and then they get an estate plan that they can print out and sign and maybe have one consultation. And what does that do? That takes an estate plan that may have been much more costly and brings it down. That doesn't mean that attorney is not successful. What we have to do is say, well, what other value do I have to that client? Well, I want to have that client. And then when they get sick or they pass away, we can provide other services. But just to be a plain old estate planning attorney or elder law attorney who's peddling powers of attorneys and wills, I just don't see it happening, many years from now, not being replaced by technology. So how we deliver our services, technology is going to make that quicker, cheaper. And the people who embrace that and embrace that future are going to be the winners. Now, I'm not saying you need to be a quantity place. There still has to be a way that people can get to you and pay extra for that service if they need it. There's still a lot that we need to do. A client who's in crisis and need medical assistance, we still need to help with that. But, if we're dealing with their children and they're at work and there's one law firm who is willing to meet with them via Zoom and the other law firm says you have to come in, there's going to be families going to choose the more technological law firm because it's simpler on their lives. The other thing that I can't underscore enough is how much this, and this is the delivery of services too, how much this has affected our workforces. One of the things that we do at the $1 Million Solution is we help with talent management and we recruit employees for our members. And we have members who say people have to come in the office 5 days a week. Well, guess what? Some of the best employees are not going to do that. I actually just hired an estate administration paralegal from a large Philadelphia firm. She was looking online. She asked if she could work virtually. I said, absolutely. So I got this fantastic employee because I'm embracing the future. I'm embracing that I'm going to have to hold her accountable in different ways, that I'm going to have to make sure she gets her job done in different ways, that her interactions with my clients are going to be different. But just to say no to that, you have every right in the world to say no to it. But I'm telling you, you're going to be effective.
Well, and to our point from earlier, try it.
Yeah.
I mean, if she doesn't work out, she doesn't work out.
Right. I love that. Yeah. Take the risk. So I did take the risk and I'm thrilled.
The conversation people are having in their heads about all the reasons that might not work. And it's like, that's exhausting, right? Just try it.
I love that. You're right. That does go back to that point. I love that.
So the one thing I'm thinking, I'm trying to put myself in the seats of our listeners, right? And one of the things that I'm thinking that I might be thinking if I'm listening to this is, oh, okay. I mean, I have to go build my own version of LegalZoom on my website, and I want to talk about that for a second because I don't think we're quite saying that, right? I mean,
no.
Look, like if you want to do that, like if you're passionate about that and you want to, you want to build your own version of TurboTax, but for family law or for estate planning or for business, I mean, like go for it. Like no one, but I think what we're kind of getting at is see that some of this entry level work is going to be impacted by technology. And I think one of the options is to find the ways you can embrace some of that technology. And it might not be building out an entire online software that does this stuff, but at the very least it'd be, putting your intake forms online. I still can't stand when I get a Word document I have to fill out. It's like, why am I doing this? So I want to say number one, right? I don't think we're saying they have to go build elaborate software. I think one of the options too is to figure out how to increase the value that you're offering.
Correct.
So what else can I offer somebody, right? I'm curious if you have any experience with that. One of the examples I always think of, and it might be more of an extreme example, but I think there's so many legal practice areas, I should say, that like some sort of like budget planning should be one of the services, like bankruptcy attorneys, estate planning attorneys, even business attorneys for their business clients, like help them do, like my business attorneys never offered to help us plan our budget, and the irony is that CPAs don't either, and so that'd be an extra, whether you pay for that or that's included in your offer. Like those are ways to kind of fight what I see is almost like the commodification of legal services. So what do you think about that? Or do you have any examples of ways that you can increase your value, whether it's new services or like not modifying how a service is offered, but like changing the service, you know what I mean? To kind of be better than the digital option.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really, what you have to do in order to do that. And I think your point is so well taken. I'm not saying that everybody has to have, build it digitally. I'm saying that you can't just sit and object to it. You have to embrace it and figure out how it goes in your situation. And as far as, one of the best books I've read recently about this, and it's like 36 pages. It's by Perry Marshall and Robert Scrobe, and it's called Detox, Declutter, and Dominate. And in there, it talks about building an espresso machine. And it talks about the fact that, people will buy, the coffee at Starbucks, for, $5, but a certain amount of people will buy a $2,000 espresso machine. And so who are those people? And so I apply that thought to my business to say, what more could we be doing for people? And again, for me, it always comes back down to niche marketing. So we do a lot of marketing for special needs planning. And yeah, the powers of attorneys and the wills, they're kind of just, entry level things. If I can get that done faster and more economically, fantastic. If I can gather their information, have a client portal, have them help in that process, fantastic. But what we do then is we spend time really getting to understand the child who might be an adult dependent child who has special needs and what really is going to happen when mom and dad die. So I spend my time talking to them about, hey, you think sister's going to take this person in, but sister has 3 kids and is going through a divorce. She may not be able to. So what's option B? And I've done some wonderful work with people who are, outside the box, thinking of new and great ways to solve that problem of what happens to this child who is adult dependent. I have one client who built a house. 3 people are going to live there. They're moving their daughter in, getting her used to it because they don't want her to be so upset when they pass away. They want her to gradually go through that. So that's just an example. But in those situations, I'm going deeper. I'm doing more and getting more involved with the client, and my counseling to them is really important. Another one, and you talked about the budget thing. I will tell you, one of my biggest things where I, for most of my career, have given away most of my time just because it was needed, is when somebody's spouse dies. So you have husband and wife, you've done their estate plan, and many of you out there would say there's nothing that needs to be done until the second of them passes away, unless it's a federal estate or some more complex planning. No, that spouse, she needs you. She needs you to talk to her about her budget. He or she, it doesn't matter. I'm working right now with my mother-in-law. She never did the finances. She's scared to death. She is convinced that she's not going to have enough money. I have to show it to her. But helping that person understand their budget, because what we find is that spouse who doesn't feel comfortable with money just doesn't use the money. They just, don't use any of the money. That's one of the things we're really developing at our firm to say, on the death of a first spouse, how can we help in this situation? Now you need the proper staff who can do a budget, who can, do that quickly and help to understand, and also counsel with the person to help them understand what, how much money they take impacts. And there's some financial advisors who do a really good job of that. But a lot of my clients, they don't have a great relationship with a financial advisor. And that's not about them. It's just how that's developed. And so that's not a service that's being provided. So that's an example. Special needs planning, Alzheimer's planning, do more, deeper, because these people, they need a guide. They're out there worrying, and a lot of you who are listening to this, are really good at what you do, and you've given this away for years. When we started really doing Alzheimer's planning in our office, we realized that all the stuff we were saying that we were going to do for them, we already were doing. Because I had staff that like cared, and like somebody called about what nursing home should they go to, and they got on the phone and answered the question. But how many people did we not serve because they didn't know they could call us and ask us that question?
Right. I mean, maybe you charge for it, maybe you don't, but it's like, right, nursing home finding, or however the terminology would be, right? But
Right.
like that's a service, and
It is.
No, I love that. I want to talk a little bit more about technology and automation. So I want to transition out the time we have left, but I think to kind of put a bow around this part of the conversation, I love what you said about, I think you need to ask yourself, what do my clients need?
Mm-hmm.
Right. That when you said, oh, there's nothing more to do when like a spouse dies. It's like, yeah, it's because you're asking yourself how the law works. Right. But when you ask yourself what your customers, what your clients need, a world opens up to you of how you potentially can help them. So I think that's step one step two for embracing the future. If step one is we're writing the book here on embracing the future. Step one is being willing to fail. Step two is figure out what your clients need beyond what you're currently giving them. Or if you are giving it to them, as you pointed out, figure out how to really lean into that more, right?
Because you're not helping everybody. So you're helping the person that picks up the phone. And for some, it's about making more money, but also for me, it's about, there was somebody out there who needed an answer to that question and didn't know that we offered that because we weren't clear about what our services were. And we didn't take the time to really talk about what is it we really do for clients, except for wills, powers of attorneys. It's a great opportunity to redefine what we do. And, I've always believed that so much that is disjointed with our healthcare system, we as attorneys could be more helpful. Oh, and that's not anything about political or getting involved with that. Bottom line, a client has a diagnosis of dementia and they end up going to the ER because they have behaviors. Listen, we knew that was going to happen. We could have told them to go to a neurologist. We could have told them that could happen and the dangers of what might happen. We have the knowledge because of what we do. And I don't care what type of attorney you are, you have the knowledge to see what they want and what they need that they don't even know, so that you can tell them about the pitfalls ahead.
It's like what we're talking about is we almost and it kind of gets into marketing into my world a little bit. We need to kind of change the way that lawyers are talking about their services. Because here's maybe something for the listeners to think about. If I go to your website, your website needs to say wills, trust, power of attorney.
Oh, absolutely.
It has to say those things. But if that's the only way you ever talk about those things, then you're using the same language that LegalZoom uses.
Exactly.
So now I'm not going to see you any different, right? If that's the only way you talk about your services, But I think there's a third point. I kind of want to wrap up with that one. And we've brushed on it a little bit, but let's talk more about the technology side of embracing the future, right? Going to, virtual consultations is the one that I think everybody is looking at right now. And whether you love it or hate it, you at least got to acknowledge, why didn't this get tried sooner?
I know.
That's not the only thing, right? It still, blows my mind how often we're exchanging emails to schedule things when there's calendaring apps these days. So whether it's administrative stuff like calendaring or how we actually deliver legal services with digital consultations, what are some of the things that you're seeing right now that law firms could be doing to be a little more modern and kind of embrace the future in terms of how they do what they do?
Yeah. So just like I said about, there's law firms out there waiting for the seminars to come back. And there's law firms out there saying this virtual, Zoom and, or whatever platform you use or phone doesn't work. And I would say to you, it does work. It works at my office and it works at many offices across this country.
I bet fill rates are higher to Zoom consultations.
Yeah, absolutely. But what people need to do is to figure out what the client experience is. So really think about, when somebody came to your office for an initial consultation, what was their experience? And how is that different? So at our office, we do things like, for instance, we have a PowerPoint that some of my staff uses to go through with the clients. Because I don't know about you, but I have a harder time paying attention on Zoom. Like I'm at my house, I look at there, that's happening. So like we do a harder job of getting people to pay attention to us and know that we have a pattern that we're going to go through. So we found that works really well. Also, in our PowerPoint, we credential ourselves. We say, this is who we are. Again, when you walk in my office, you kind of get that we're successful, but on Zoom, you don't know. You don't know that could be a virtual background. You don't know. So you have to be willing to talk about who you are and why they should be listening.
You could do an office tour over Zoom.
Absolutely.
Walk them around and introduce them to the staff and hold the, and you know what, to our point from earlier, if you don't like it, you either tweak it. Mm-hmm. And if you keep tweaking it and you still don't like it, then you eventually move on. But I think part of embracing the future is we try stuff.
Yeah. And one of the things we did is we had a camera come in and take outside shots of our office. And we use that as part of our marketing because, it shouldn't necessarily be that way. But we're a real law office. I know you hear me on the phone or, via Zoom, but we're real people. And that credentials us in and of itself. So I think when you think about technology, it's just like what we were talking about before. Don't naysay it. Figure out, okay, embrace it. If I have to do this Zoom or this phone call, how can I make it the best client experience? And that's what you have to do. Now, we do phone calls. We have clients who, can't read lips through the mask, although we have masks that, you can see our lips through. There is a lot of pitfalls. Please know I'm not underestimating that. But I am saying that this can really work. I think, I brought this up because that's what I hear from a lot of attorneys. Oh, it doesn't work to do that. That's because what you're trying to do is do the same thing you did in an initial consultation in person. It's different. You got to figure out how does it work for you, and your client experience is different. If you're listening to this and you didn't look at your letters and what you send out to your clients, or like you said, if you're still sending out something and you want them to print it out, hand it out and scan it back into you, that's not happening.
I won't do it.
I know, DocuBank, sign, Adobe signature. Even within our office, we sign things for each other, like check requests. We're not printing those out anymore. To be honest with you, last March, when I live in Pennsylvania, and that's where I practice law, I was on my way home from Boston. I had brought my mom home. She got stuck up there because of COVID. She was with my daughter. And I'll never forget Sarah calling me and telling me that our governor had completely shut us down with a day's notice. Now, he did that because it was coming from from New York City. You could see it just coming across New Jersey to us. I was devastated. I didn't know what to do. I was so upset. But I will tell you, I look at that now as a gift, because I didn't have my staff working from home because I was so worried about confidentiality. We're a law office, oh my gosh, that file can't leave here. I was so worried about stuff like that I put my own ceiling on myself. And when I look back, that making me do that so quickly and figure it out, it was the biggest gift I was ever given, because today my entire staff can work virtually. We implemented Sign Now, DocuSign. We did all kinds of things we had never done before.
Those are great examples. It reminds me of honestly one that I didn't even think of until you were explaining that. So when we went remote, everyone's on desktop computers at the office, and it was like, oh my gosh. Everyone's lugging these desktop computers out of here, and I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy. Yeah. So it got me thinking, and the answer was obvious, but I had just never asked myself it. And it was like, well, what if everyone had laptops instead of desktops? Mm-hmm. And I started thinking through it all, and all this. And here's what's interesting. I think and I actually want to talk about this for a second, because I actually think that this is something any business should consider doing, because the wins are huge from doing what I'm about to explain. Mm-hmm. But at first, the obstacles were obvious, right? I was thinking to myself, well, the screen's too small, and the computers could break, and maybe laptops aren't as powerful, and then I started looking at the technology, and it's like, okay, well, obviously they can hook up to an external monitor, mm-hmm. and Apple just released their new computers where they make their own chips, and they're super fast, so they're super powerful. And I started playing around with the technology, and you talked earlier about being a learner and how important that is. Mm-hmm. And, one of my pieces of advice would almost be like, whether even it's just an hour a month, I think more than that, be a block out like literally learning time on your calendar just to dive into something random, whether it's about your practice area or not. Because what I actually did is I spent a little bit of time online looking up some of this tech stuff about these computers, and I found things that ended up being a big deal, like these new computers have one cord that can do power, data, and everything. And now, why does that matter? Because right now I'm talking to you on a laptop that has one cord plugged into a monitor, and that one cord is also charging the laptop. And so it's just like, oh, this is super cool. And so we're about to roll this out in our company. And all of this to say, not only will this make remote working more valuable, but what we also realize is that collaboration in the office is easier because someone can just unplug their laptop with one cord, walk into somebody else's office, and show them whatever they're working on. And we kind of stumbled onto an advantage that we never would have otherwise, you know? So I don't know what the lesson is there necessarily, but it's definitely an example of a long time ago, I decided that you should have a desktop computer on your desk, and I never revisited it. And oh my gosh, everything's changing now because we're going to do this. The technology's better, collaboration is better. We're more agile because people can take their computers home with them if they need to. And if it wasn't for COVID, I never even would have thought to explore it.
Yeah, and I think that's great because I think that's where all of us are. You know, without COVID, we would have never thought to explore it. You know, I remember when somebody called I was on a phone call early on, and they're like, "Well, they can't take their computer home; they have a desktop." I was like, "Yeah, they can. Unplug it." You know, like it's not. So, you know, I think, you know, the lesson here for those people who are listening, I think it's you're on here because you're a leader in some ways, whether you own the place, whether you're an attorney, but you're in a leader in some position. And your job is to find the solution. Your job is not to jump on the naysayer bandwagon that exists out there. I feel like most of what I do on any given day is just unstick people. They hit an obstacle and they don't know how to go around it. And that's my job. And I think, you know, what we're trying to say here is don't let technology become an obstacle for you. Embrace what it means and the change. Get clarity around what that means. I'm not saying you have to learn all this stuff because I'm not good at technology and I couldn't learn all this stuff, but I can outsource it. I can connect with people who understand it.
And we have this wonderful thing called Google.
Yeah, that is true.
I'll tell you what, hey, I want to wrap up just because I want to be respectful of your time, but I have two questions for you as we wrap up. And I love talking about this topic, and I'm sure we'll have you back in the future. But first question is just how can people get in touch with you, or maybe if they want to learn more about your law firm, maybe tell them where to go, and maybe give a quick plug for MDS and where, maybe even why they should go check that out.
Yeah, fantastic. So my law firm website is www.pa, as in Pennsylvania, elder is an old person, counsel, COUNSEL.com. So PAElderCounsel.com. That is the law firm of Steinbacher, Goodall, and Yurchak, which is a firm that I founded about 20 years ago, to be honest with you. And then the MDS, the $1 Million Solution, is at themilliondollarlawyer.com. So milliondollarlawyer.com. And if you want any information about that, the best thing to do is to email Dom Loffredo at dloffredo, LOFFREDO at themilliondollarlawyer.com. And he's be happy to help you, but you can get on the website or you can reach him by email if you have any questions. The $1 Million Solution is a coaching group that's a community of people that are designed to help each other build the life and the practices that they want. It started out as a marketing coaching group, and we were very successful in getting people more clients. And then we realized that we had to help them build a team, help them get, I think the number one thing I do is help people get clarity about what they want. I've seen too many times that people build things that they really didn't want. And so we really have to, challenge ourselves to figure out what it is we want. It is a smaller coaching group with more individual type of attention. So it's not for everybody, but for those people that we help, we have members who have been with us for many, many years, and they continue on because of the success that they have with what we teach.
Awesome. And I can back that up. I've attended your events and heard what you guys talk about, and and seeing the community, and it's really awesome, and I can't recommend it enough. Last thing before you go, if you could give just one piece of advice to all the lawyers out there, what would it be?
Yeah. Don't forget that the impact that you have on people's lives. So I think sometimes we get busy with our day-to-day task and we forget the profound impact that we have on people's lives, no matter what type of law you practice. But for those of you who are elder law and estate planning attorneys, you can literally change a family. You can save a family. You can save a loved one's money. You can help them have a better experience. Don't forget, it is our impact. And take time to really understand what your impact is and ensure that your impact is what it should be. And to be honest with you, if you get that right, everything else falls into place, because your employees will see you as a leader and they'll lead from you. If you understand the impact and you talk about that impact, your content marketing will fall into place. For me, I think sometimes we lose sight in our day-to-day world and everything that we have to get done, about how just important it is and how privileged we are to do our jobs to help people.
Awesome. I'll start off after that. So thanks
Fantastic.
so much today, Julie. And just really, really great having you today.
Yes, thank you. I've enjoyed it a lot.
Thanks for listening. To learn more, go to spotlightbranding.com/centerstage.